Hello, I'm Robin. Welcome to Bookspin. It's monthly wrap up time again. Now, before I start talking about some books, I think I should mention a bit of news. I recently received a very nice letter and accompanying gift from Samuel Delany, the legendary American SF author, which was incredibly nice of him. Now, if you've seen the video that Bart posted recently on his channel, Bart's Bookspace, you'll know what this is about. Basically, Bart and Ira and Brandon and I recently collaborated in a video in which we discussed Stations of the Tide. Following the publication of that video, Samuel Delany reached out to Ira and offered to send each of us this letter and this gift. So if you watch Bart's video, which I'll post in the video description, he explains a bit of the context behind this and he reads the letter out loud. So I do recommend you check that out. But anyway, here is the necklace that I'm talking about. So you can see it's got this kind of Q symbol with an arrow pointing through it. Now this is based on Theodore Sturgeon's creed of ask the next question. So this gets explained within the letter. Anyway, I think that's a really amazing and cool gift and very kind of Mr. Delany to send each of us one of these. So I'll put it on. There we go. So yeah, that was cool. That was totally unexpected. I've since written back to Samuel Delany to thank him. Now, I've not actually read any of Samuel Delany's books yet, so now I feel like I really ought to. I do have this copy of Nova here, SF Book Club edition, so maybe I should bump this up my TBR. Let me know if you've read this book. Would you recommend it? Anyway, let's get on to the books. July wrap-up. So I started off the month by finishing off Project Pope by Clifford D. Simak. This is an entertaining novel. It's crammed full of interesting sci-fi ideas. And the plot features a society of Catholic robots in the far future. Now, I talked about this book a fair bit last time, so I won't say any more here. It is, in fact, one of the novels that I discussed in my recent video, Sci-Fi Meets Religion. The next book that I moved on to was The Other Side of the Mountain by Michel Bernanos. This was quite fascinating. It's a short novel, originally written in French in 1963. And this is a story that can't really be pigeonholed into any single genre. It's kind of a blend of several things: fantasy, horror, literary fiction, sci-fi, and weird fiction. It's all wrapped up in one, and this is quite impressive for a book of its length. It's basically a novella. Anyway, this is the account of a young man who has just come of age, who gets persuaded to board a sailing ship to the New World on an expedition to pick up gold in Peru. So I'm not sure exactly when this story is set, but clearly it's back in the day, it's historical. Anyway, it's a kind of perilous adventure story in the tradition of the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym. The first half of the novel reads kind of like a realist maritime adventure. Lots of things go wrong. The fellow sailors that this boy has to live with are absolutely horrible, and they face all manner of perils and disaster and life-threatening situations at sea. It's pretty horrific, but nothing really, really weird or supernatural happens. But then, in the second act of the story, that's when things start to get super weird. So he gets shipwrecked and washed up on an island alongside the ship's cook. and things start to get really bizarre and nightmarish and hallucinatory. That's really as much as you need to know without wishing to spoil anything. It's very weird, very horrific, and pretty mind-bending, and a bit of a head-scratcher because it's not entirely clear what's going on, if this boy has entered another dimension, or even another planet, or perhaps some kind of afterlife. There are a lot of possible interpretations for this book. So that was interesting. Then after that, I moved on to Red Orc's Rage by Philip Jose Farmer, which is a bit of an unusual book. I read this one as part of my World of Tears series read, but this novel is a bit of an outlier because, well, it's probably more accurate to describe this book as a spin-off rather than part of the series proper. A metafictional spin-off. The basic concept is it's set in the real world, i.e. the world that we live in and we recognise, in the year 1979, and we follow a troubled teenage boy from a dysfunctional family in a deprived community, and he has all kinds of mental health problems. Anyway, after a certain crisis takes place within his life, he is offered help in the form of an experimental psychiatric program. And this is called Tearsian therapy. So what this is we have patients who read the World of Tears books, right? Philip Jose Farmer's books, and are encouraged to role play a character of their choice from these books as a form of therapy. As crazy as that concept sounds, this is actually based on a real life system of therapy that a psychiatrist employed and consulted with Farmer in the writing of this book. So that's the basic premise. We've got this primary narrative about this boy and his journey through psychotherapy. But at the same time, there's also a second narrative. And so that the character that he chooses to identify with is Red Orc, which is one of the antagonists in the World of Tears series. And in doing so, he regularly enters a trance-like state in which he channels this character. And it's through these episodes that we learn more about the character of Red Orc and his backstory. That part of the story is like it's a Red Orc story set within the World of Tears universe, and it kind of functions a bit like a prequel to the main series. So it's quite an interesting concept, but it's open to debate whether this could be considered canonical or not. I'm not really sure what I feel about this book. I think personally it's probably not my favorite in the series. It's probably my least favorite in the series so far. And I think that might be because Red Orc as a character is not very likable. He's not a sympathetic character, and if anything, he becomes worse as the story progresses. And he was never a character which I was interested in the main series anyway. I was more interested in Jim, who is the boy in the IRL story. As a whole, this novel is not bad, and I think it does deserve credit for its originality and its concept, but it lacks the charm and the fascinating world building that you can find in the main World of Tears novels. Then I moved on to The Stone God Awakens after finishing Red Orc's Rage, and this is another Philip Jose Farmer book. I read this one as a buddy read with Deb from Omnivorous Reader. This is a standalone novel with a very interesting premise. A scientist from the year 1985 gets petrified as the result of an accident in an experiment involving freezing matter at the atomic level. Millions of years pass by, then he wakes up, he finds himself in a world in which humanity has long since gone extinct. And the world is now populated with multiple intelligent species of various bipedal races who appear to have derived from animal ancestors such as cats and raccoons and bears and bats and other things besides. And what follows is an adventure story in which he takes on the role of a god, pretty much, and leader of a band of followers in this new world. So it's a pretty weird and wonderful adventure with some intriguing world building and some pretty exciting action sequences. I had a video discussion with Deb about this book. It's up on my channel if you'd like to know more. I then started reading Zima Blue by Alistair Reynolds, which is a short story collection, originally published in 2006, then updated, I think, in 2009, I think it was, with extra content. So this book collects his non-Revelation Space short stories up to that point. I'm currently on the 6th story out of a total of 14. Now, I am enjoying this book so far, but as is often the case with collections and anthologies, some of the stories are more enjoyable to read than others. I think my favourite so far is Signal to Noise, which is a near-future novella set in Cardiff, and it's a kind of parallel worlds multiverse story. So I am enjoying it. The book as a whole, I am getting through it a little bit more slowly than usual. I think sometimes it takes me a little bit longer to get through short story collections than with novels. So what I might do is I might put this on pause for a bit, this book. I'm missing long form fiction and return to it later, like dip into these stories every now and then. That is one of the advantages of short story collections. They have that kind of flexibility. So finally, my audiobook pick for July was a non-fiction book, How to Live Like a Stoic by Tom Hodgkinson, narrated by the author. This was an interesting little foray into the Stoics of ancient Greece and Rome, the philosophy and the wisdom of Stoicism, and how its values and its ideas could be applied in the modern world. Some aspects of which I would agree with, others less so, but it's an entertaining and insightful read with quite a light-hearted and humorous tone. So, let's move on to my August TBR. So, starting with Zima Blue, I'm going to continue reading this book, but as I've said just now, I might space this book out a bit more, intersperse these stories alongside the novels that I'm reading. We'll see. Now, there are two novels which are definitely on the cards for August. First up, More Than Fire by Philip Jose Farmer, which is the final book in the World of Tears series. As Roger Zelazny says on the front cover, a bang-up conclusion to a highly entertaining series. Once I finish this book, I intend to make a World of Tears series wrap-up video reviewing all of the books. The other novel, which I will read later in the month, I think, is Light by M. John Harrison. So I've got this book reserved for late August, I think, as my next buddy read with Ira, Brandon, and Bart. So we will get together for another group discussion. I'm not sure when that will be yet, but it probably won't be for another month or so. I have not read this author before. I've heard it's quite a challenging book. I actually saw M. John Harrison at a talk, and I got him to sign this copy a little while back. So yeah, this could be interesting. So those are the books that I'm planning to read. There are some other things which I might get round to this month. I'm not committing myself to anything here, but there are a few novels that I do want to read. So one which is quite high up the TBR is When the Sleeper Wakes by H.G. Wells, an absolute classic. The one Wells book which I haven't got round to yet that I really want to read. Another option is Flowers for Algernon, again another absolute classic by Daniel Keyes. A newish release, Anti-State by Ellen Stroud. Very nice shiny cover. This one was sent to me by the publisher. Or Nova, which I mentioned earlier, by Samuel R. Delany. Another classic. Right now, among those books, I'm leaning towards When the Sleeper Wakes, but we'll see. And finally, I should also mention my audiobook pick for August, and that is The Psychology of Time Travel by Kate Mascarenhas. So this is a modern time travel novel published in 2018 as a debut novel. I can't remember how I found out about this book, but it was in my wish list on Audible. So I don't know a lot about it. I'm kind of going in blind. I've just started listening to it. From what I've gathered so far, the story centers around 4 women who invented time machine in 1967, and then the narrative jumps about in time from there. And I think there's a murder mystery. So I do like time travel tales, so I'm curious to see where this goes. And it's not a book that I've heard anyone talk about yet on BookTube. So that about does it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.